Now, one thing that is already universally known at this point by the general public is the fact that Disney is in full-on damage control.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole.
What happens when the lead actress of a $200 million Disney film trashes the original story before the movie even hits theaters? You get one of the biggest PR disasters the House of Mouse has ever seen.
And it is more disastrous than we could have imagined for Disney's Snow White. A movie that was projected, projections kept going down and down and down into this weekend. Finally, the final tally was 45 to 55 million domestically and over $100 million worldwide. Well, here's the result. Box office, Snow White leads with sleepy 43 million.
And it wasn't just a few offhand remarks. This was a full-blown meltdown that spiraled out of control, tanking the project before it had a chance to find its footing.
This is truly, she has to go. I'm sorry, Disney. She has to go.
Now, one thing about Rachel Zegler is that we know that she's not helping at all one bit.
But these guys at Disney, they're not that bright, they're not that smart, and we see that because they can't come up with any new IP. Why not write some new movies? You guys sit around, you have billions of dollars. They keep going back and rewriting the classics.
I came back, the losses were around $4 billion a year.
Well, I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry. Has there been a film with worse casting than this? And I don't just mean the Snow White actress. Obviously, she's terrible, but both of them.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White.
Right.
You should shut up and do the...
Neither of them make any sense for their roles. We've already covered how Rachel Zegler is a terrible choice for Snow White. Nothing about her says Snow White, and that's even leaving aside the fact that she openly detests the story, as she's said many times during this disastrous PR campaign. But Gal Gadot, who plays the Queen, the first problem is that she's the evil queen. The evil queen is supposed to be envious of Snow White's beauty, and that is just not believable. It is just not, even in a movie with magical mirrors and dwarves and all that, in a fairy tale, that strains my ability to suspend disbelief. I cannot buy that Gal Gadot is angry that she's not as beautiful as Rachel Zegler. I cannot buy that.
Welcome to the curious case of Rachel Zegler and the Snow White remake, where controversy, arrogance, and tone-deaf interviews collided with one of Hollywood's most iconic fairy tales. Disney had every reason to think this project would be a slam dunk, a live-action reboot of one of its oldest and most beloved properties. Easy money, right? They cast Rachel Zegler, a young rising star with a solid singing voice and previous acclaim from West Side Story. On paper, she seemed like a great fit, but the moment she opened her mouth during the promotional circuit, the entire illusion started to unravel.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business.
What's really interesting about this is not that this is something new. Rachel Zegler has been doing this for a very long time.
Instead of praising the legacy of the film she was hired to lead, she trashed it, calling the 1937 original outdated, weird, and irrelevant. That didn't just raise eyebrows. It lit the internet on fire. Her comments about the classic film being about a guy who literally stalks her sent shockwaves through Disney's core audience. This wasn't a niche indie film. This was Snow White.
Her controversy has swirled around Gal Gadot's new movie, also starring Rachel Zegler as Snow White. A lot of people don't like her. A lot of people don't like her either. She's got a big mouth. She talked trash about the original movie. But I think the movie bombed because it's bad. Those CGI little people.
Now for Disney, as you probably remember, all of this publicity, the Zegler interviews, the Daily Mail leak, caused a lot of unexpected, for them anyway, pre-production problems. People weren't supposed to see and understand just how unwatchable the new Snow White was going to be. It was supposed to be, kind of a surprise, but now there was no hiding it.
The reason why Rachel Zegler sticks around is she's got a beautiful voice and she has some talent. So I think that certainly helps her because she's a PR nightmare. I don't know how anyone would hire her.
Disney is having its own problems. They're finally releasing the latest adaptation of Snow White. but they're scaling back the Hollywood premiere of the film. Kinsey, why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR.
Generations of fans had grown up loving the story. Suddenly, the woman chosen to embody it was publicly saying she didn't believe in the very tale she was being paid millions to tell. It was like casting someone as Harry Potter and having them go on record saying they hate magic. Zegler's remarks seemed not only dismissive but bizarrely combative. She framed the story as regressive, laughed off the idea of a love story, and implied that the entire original premise needed to be rewritten to fit her version of what a modern fairy tale should be. But here's the catch. When you're cast in a remake of a beloved property, your job is to bring the story to life, not insult it before audiences even get a chance to see it.
Given all the behind-the-scenes mayhem, I expected a Frankenstein's monster were seen to be stitched together. I think a lot of these live-action updates are really hard to watch. They've really done so much stepping on rakes over the last few months with this project where the box office is just not going to recover.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
I think it's fair to say that no one can stand the star of this movie.
Disney's PR team scrambled into damage control mode. Zegler started appearing in new interviews with a drastically different tone. Now, she claimed to love the original. She gushed about Snow White's heart, her innocence, her bravery. But it was too little, too late. The internet had already labeled her insincere. Her emotional monologues felt forced, even fake. People weren't buying the rebrand. Audiences are quick to detect a PR spin, and this one reeked of desperation. Viewers clipped together montages of her contradicting statements, which only fueled the backlash. Some of the most brutal reactions came not just from angry fans, but from influencers and commentators who pointed out that if you're going to headline a remake of a cultural touchstone, you should at least pretend to respect its legacy.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
And then came the dwarf controversy. When Peter Dinklage slammed Disney for its plans to portray the Seven Dwarfs, the studio responded by ditching them entirely in favor of bizarre CGI magical creatures. It didn't sit well with fans or with actors in the dwarf community who felt they were being robbed of rare roles in a major film. Leaked set photos made things worse. People laughed at the designs, turning them into memes. It was starting to look less like a magical remake and more like a parody of itself. The irony? Dinklage himself wasn't even in the movie. He simply made a comment, and Disney, in typical modern fashion, overcorrected. Instead of re-evaluating the execution or consulting with dwarf actors, they panicked. The result? A bizarre ensemble of CGI creations that looked like they belonged in a DreamWorks knockoff instead of a prestigious Disney production.
That audiences walk away from this film with an understanding of the true meaning of fairness, of what it means to be fair in this world. There is a message that's been carried on for almost 90 years now from the original animated classic. That is, fairness is what is within. Fairness is to do with your heart, the way you treat the people around you, and it has nothing to do with what you look like, and that's the misunderstanding between Snow White and the Evil Queen. I think it's such an important message, and the way that Disney has elevated it and brought it to this new audience is very special.
By this point, Rachel Zegler had become a meme magnet. Clips of her interviews went viral, but not in a good way. Her past comments about not enjoying her time filming West Side Story resurfaced. Now, the narrative was clear. She's entitled, ungrateful, and impossible to market. Studios began to take notice. Whispers from inside Hollywood suggested directors were thinking twice before ever hiring her again.
And now she's trying to reinvent herself because there's been so much blowback, and you can only imagine the studio calls about this woman behind the scene. Like, oh my God, we're $242 million in, and our lead actress hates our film, our actors, our storyline.
And this is where it all starts to unravel. Zegler was supposed to be Disney's new Golden Girl, a young Latina actress leading one of their most iconic fairy tales. It was a moment that could have reshaped her career and solidified her as a household name. Instead, she became an online punchline. Twitter threads dissected every one of her interviews. YouTube channels posted reaction videos calling her Hollywood's latest disaster. And worst of all, people stopped rooting for her. Still, some held out hope. Maybe the film would be so good, it could rise above the drama. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The live-action Snow White debuted to underwhelming box office numbers. Instead of a packed premiere, Disney scaled everything down. Theaters weren't full. Audiences didn't show up. With a budget rumored to exceed $200 million, the film made just $87 million globally in its opening weekend. That's not just a flop, that's a disaster. And for Disney, the blow was massive. This wasn't just another title in their ever-growing list of remakes. This was Snow White, the film that started it all in 1937, the one that built the foundation for Disney's empire. For it to fail so publicly and so spectacularly wasn't just a financial loss. It was a symbolic one, and it sent a message to other studios. Nostalgia alone won't save you if your lead actress alienates the audience before the first trailer even drops.
I remember back in 2023 when this was going on and all the little people making videos saying, well, wait, there's so few roles for us in Hollywood. We're being passed over for this. You could have cast seven little
Peter
people.
Dinklage.
Exactly. They're like, Peter Dinklage, you're rich. We're not. We're trying to be extras, or, we're in Johnny Knoxville's Jackass if we're lucky. And so for them, they're like, you're not going to cast us.
Even worse, people who did see the film complained about everything from its pacing to its bizarre tone. Critics slammed the lack of charm, the awkward performances, and how far the story strayed from the original. What was supposed to be Disney's nostalgic cash cow ended up being a cautionary tale in what not to do. And at the center of it all, Rachel Zegler, a talented young woman whose career might have taken a completely different turn if she'd simply kept her critiques to herself. Instead, she publicly roasted a story beloved by millions, tried to walk it back when the backlash exploded, and ended up torpedoing a film that could have defined her career. Meanwhile, Disney is left licking its wounds. Rumors are flying about internal shakeups, executives being quietly reassigned, and future remakes being shelved indefinitely. As for the Seven Dwarfs, they might have dodged a bullet. At least they weren't associated with this PR nightmare. What's especially ironic is that this could have been a turning point for Zegler's career in the best way. She had the platform, the spotlight, the potential, but she lacked the self-awareness and humility that modern audiences crave. She positioned herself as above the role, above the fans, and even above the very studio paying her salary. That kind of arrogance doesn't fly, especially not in the internet age. So what's the moral of the story? In Hollywood, talent is only part of the equation. Public perception matters. Respect for the material matters. And when you're handed the keys to an empire, maybe don't start by insulting the foundation it was built on. Because in this kingdom, even the biggest stars can find themselves out in the cold when the magic runs dry. Let us know your thoughts. Was this train wreck inevitable? Or could Disney have turned things around with different casting and smarter PR? Drop your take in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more no-holds-barred breakdowns of Hollywood's biggest flops and wildest moments. Until next time, stay tuned and stay skeptical.